Hello, my dear friends. Today we will discuss the key updates of the week. New Russian tactic of striking mobilization officers in Ukraine. Party and fireworks at Russian military factories. Russian aviation loses $250 million in just 2 days. Ukraine's armed forces launching new marketplace. Karma strikes Russian shadow fleet, and a fresh Russian general, Gudkov, becomes good only about 3 months after getting promoted. You're watching the Frontline Focus. I'm Operator Starsky. Let's roll. First of all, the Russian terrorists recently came up with a new brilliant strategy. Brilliant like a screen door on a submarine. So over the past several weeks, we have recorded increased number of terror Russian strikes on the mobilization officers. Let me explain this one. Because Russians always project their own mentality on others, they decided that striking mobilization centers will help Russian terrorists improve their own image in the eyes of Ukrainian men avoiding mobilization. Yes, there are such people in any part of the globe. So Kremlin expected that after years of striking Ukrainian power plants and centralized heating centers in winter, after using missiles and strike drones to kill thousands of Ukrainian civilians at homes, after hitting Ukrainian children hospitals and kindergartens, after recruiting Ukrainian teenagers as suicide bombers through messengers and social media, and now by striking mobilization centers that are usually packed with people, the Ukrainian civilians will be like, oh, now the Russians are actually doing something good. It's time to finally just give up and allow them to come here and kill us like they did in Bucha. We won't resist. That's just so you could understand the way of thinking in Kremlin, okay? Generally, the Russian mentality is a really funny subject to study because they believe that Russia can solve any problem using genocide. You know, I've said it previously and I will keep saying this. Russia is the ISIS of the Slavic world. They might be really good at murder, but at the same time they are imbeciles on so many levels. Switching gears, let's talk about the last week's Moonlight missile show. A bunch of good Ukrainian drones hit the Krasnozavodsk chemical plant near Moscow. Why it's important is because this plant is a big manufacturer of explosives and ammo components for the Russian military. In particular, they produce different types of powder, and the General Staff of Ukraine reported that the special military operation party at this plant resulted in a spectacular firework. Same with Near Progress facility in Cheboksary. This place produces precision weapon gear and different equipment like stuff for Shahed drones, gliding bombs, Iskander missiles, etc. Knocking those factories offline hits right at the heart of what keeps Russia's war machine moving, and it's really good. Another good news is that Russia's airports are in chaos. Sheremetyevo saw around 170 flights cancelled and 56 delays. Pulkovo had around 90 cancellations, others followed suit. Results around 200 billion rubles or almost 250 million bucks wasted in just 2 days. Less money for the terror Russia's war machine equals more Ukrainian lives saved. And besides that, every time there's a drone strike in Russia, they also tend to shut down their mobile communications, which is a tiny but extremely encouraging bonus. Why is it good, you may ask? Well, first of all, unlike Russian terrorists, Ukraine doesn't attack civilian airports. The reason Russians ground their airplanes is not because of the aerial threat, but because they are afraid to shoot down their own planes, like it happened numerous times before. And second thing, if the airplanes don't fly in Ukraine, then why the heck should they fly in Russia, right? I think it's fair. This is something we call karma, my dear friends, because you cannot fly to Egypt or Turkey while bombing Ukraine. If you bomb Ukraine, please stay in Russia and face your civilian responsibility. Now, my friends, there is something really cool that I would like to share with you. So Ukraine launched the Chain Defense, also known as Brave One Marketplace. What the heck is that, you may ask? Basically, it's like an Amazon for weapons, where Ukrainian frontline brigades can order necessary weapons or equipment and have it delivered really fast. Generally, the level of digitalization in Ukraine may shock you, my friends, and you can ask about it anyone who's been to Ukraine over the past 10 years, because you can literally solve most of your problems having only a smartphone and a bunch of life-saving apps. The new military marketplace is still being tested. We know that 10 brigades of the armed forces are involved, and if it proves its efficiency and reliability, the marketplace will become available for all Ukrainian military units. How do you like that, Elon Musk? Now, let's talk mysterious explosions plaguing the so-called shadow fleet of the terrorist federation. We've already seen a few blasts hitting multiple tankers here and there, and all those tankers were tied to the fleet smuggling Russian resources in violation of international sanctions placed on the terrorist Russian state. For example, the Vilyamura near Libya, or an LPG tanker in Ust-Luga spouting ammonia. Now, my dear defenders, before your imagination starts breeding Ukrainian ninjas planting time bombs in those tankers, or Ukrainian naval drones stalking them at night, let me tell you a bit about the Russian shadow fleet. Ukrainian intelligence, S&P Global and Oxford Analytica estimated that the Russian shadow fleet consists of approximately 600 aging vessels used by the Russian terrorists to smuggle oil, gas, and other resources. Aging means not like years older than their expiration date, it means decades older. The Russians basically purchased a lot of cheap ships that were meant to be disassembled, and the reason we can now see all those explosions and mishaps, by the way, damaging environment and dumping all sorts of chemicals into the open ocean, that's pretty much because those vessels were heading to a scrapyard before being purchased by Kremlin to try to evade sanctions. This is something you should know if you feel concerned about environment as much as I do, because of course we can celebrate every Russian tanker falling apart in the open sea, but the fact that Russia literally runs hundreds of giant dirty time bombs around the earth is extremely disturbing. I believe that all those tankers and the rest of the terror Russian ships should be at least arrested and eventually disassembled. Russia's terrorist group, known as 155th Marine Brigade, that is infamous for brutal mass murder in Bucha and atrocities committed in Kursk Oblast of Russia. So this heroic Russian brigade is finally getting its own dose of irony. First of all, the whole command of this infamous terrorist group got wiped out by Ukrainian missile strike in Kursk. Among them was a former commander of this brigade, Mikhail Gudkov, who was promoted by the internationally wanted war criminal Putin as a general just 3 months ago, and also he was assigned as a deputy commander of the Russian terrorist navy. For his atrocities committed against Ukrainians, the war criminal Gudkov received a title of Hero of Russia, and now he's out. Russia is whining, but again, if you are brave enough to kill helpless civilians in a foreign country, please be brave to face consequences. Today is Gudkov, tomorrow probably Putin himself, and the day after tomorrow you should really start thinking of finding a way to pay out reparations to Ukraine and other countries for what you've done. This is fair, this is just, and this is exactly how it will end for the terrorist Russian Empire already in the observable future. So what do we see, my dear friends? Russia's playing dumb, hitting mobilization centers in Ukraine. On the flip side, Ukraine's striking critical Russian military and industrial nodes, collapsing Russian air connectivity, innovating with procurement, and even bringing down the top brass. Personally, I would not call it luck, my friends, because it's a strategy, you know, something that Douglas MacGregor obviously lost in a bottle of Russian vodka. Frontline Focus signing off. Until next time, my dear friends, stay sharp, stay cheeky, and keep calling these terrorist clowns for what they are. My name is Operator Starsky. Thanks for watching.